Hello, hello, YouTube friends. I am so excited today. I have one of my longtime friends and Dr. Kofi Essel on the show. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm so good. So we have been friends, I think, for over a decade, but we haven't talked to each other in years.
Yep, yep. It's been a long time. I've been watching your success from afar, but really excited to reconnect for sure.
Okay, so for my YouTube friends, Kofi and I went to Emory together back into
Yep,
year,
yeah.
and it was way too long ago. I think that we went up through the ranks together, and then a couple of weeks ago, you reached out and we were talking about communication. I was like, I have to bring you on the YouTube channel to talk about the non-health side of healthcare, bedside manner, trust, building rapport. But before we get into that, I have to read your amazing bio. So just to tell you all a little bit about what Dr. Kofi Essel's up to. Dr. Essel is a board-certified community pediatrician at Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C. Dr. Essel also serves as an assistant professor of pediatrics, the director of George Washington University's School of Medicine's Community Urban Health Scholarly Concentration, a clinical public health mentor, and the director of the Clinical Public Health Summit on Obesity. You've been busy. Dr. Essel has dedicated his career to advocacy and research around healthcare training, health disparities, and community engagement with expertise and national recognition in the areas of addressing obesity and food insecurity in families. Dr. Essel has received numerous local and national awards, I'm not surprised, for his professional practice, most recently being selected for top 40 under 40 leaders in health award by National Minority Quality Forum. Welcome again. Thanks so much for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you for having me. It's my honor.
Okay, so everyone who is listening, I really wanted to talk to someone who works in healthcare about what are some of the science, what's some of the psychology around not only working with patients, but working with patients and their families, working with our colleagues. How do we talk about communication and building trust? So the first question I actually have for you is, how important is this side of medicine and medical practice?
Ultimately, I think you have the science, and we don't necessarily study the science as much, but at the same time, we recognize the importance of really engaging with our families, really making sure that we're making a good connection. I think about when I connect with my families in particular in the clinical space, I have a few seconds. I have a few seconds to really make an impact, make a statement, because if not, I've lost it completely. I've lost it completely. And I think it's so important that in those first few seconds in engaging with the families I work with the child and the parent, I have to connect well.
Mm. So here's my question for you. So the science says that our first impressions are very quick and very permanent, and oftentimes in as little as a second. When you're thinking about walking into a room or walking into a waiting room, are you thinking about that first second, those first few seconds? Are you thinking about nonverbal? Are you thinking about verbal? How long do you think you have?
It's a good question. I think I often do think about the connection and the way I'm engaging with my families in particular, because sometimes you can look back and you can see that they're kind of sizing you up. Like, what is he gonna say? What is he gonna bring to the table? What is he bringing that we don't understand? And I know it's really important to really just break that ice, make that connection as quick as I can. I don't think you have much time, to be honest. 5 to 10 seconds is sort of what I've really sort of gone off of over the years.
Okay, 5 to 10 seconds. Now walk me through. This is going to be the most ridiculous question you've probably ever gotten. Are you ready? Okay. You have to go into a room. You know a patient's behind the door. You
Yeah.
open the door. Are you carrying a clipboard? Do you wave? Do you handshake? What do you have a protocol for those first
Yes.
seconds?
So we can do pre-COVID and post-COVID,
Let's
right?
do it. Yeah.
Okay. So pre-COVID, so one of the things is we actually carry laptops around with us. Okay. So we carry laptops to our rooms instead of having a computer in the room ready to go. What I make sure I do is I know what the patient's name is. I see children, right? I know what the patient's name is. And in particular, I just double check to see, have I seen them before? You see a lot of patients, and you got to make sure, I mean, in a community practice as I'm in, sometimes we're seeing different patients that we may not have seen before. They're new. I want to make sure that if I've connected with them before, I do not act surprised. I do not act like they're brand new to me, because you're losing trust already right then and there.
Wait, okay.
So what happens is,
I'm writing this down. So one is actually a very important, you said name. You check the name. So one is make sure you know the name. Two is, have I met them before?
Yes. Have I met them before? And name is really important in making sure that I know the name and know how to say the name the best I can. And if I don't, of course, I'll ask. And I think that's perfectly fine. So I'll go into the room. First thing I tend to do is greet the child. I try to get the child's level because what I've noticed is if the parent sees that I engage with the child, it really takes the stress off of them. I see their face sort of changing. They seem more comfortable with me if I can engage with the child. So typically pre-COVID, high-fiving the child, saying the child's name, and then asking the child to introduce me to who this other person is in the room with them oftentimes. So who did you bring with you today? So really getting a chance to really engage with the child more. And the parents, of course, they love that. They laugh at that or
Okay.
anything.
Okay,
Yeah,
wait.
go
So
ahead.
you just brought up two things that I think psychologically are incredibly important. And I don't know if people listening notice this. So the first is when you're talking about teaching, presenting, or helping, you have the person you're helping, and then you also have the person who's observing. And this happens all the time, right? In Q&As, when you're interacting with patients, the way that you treat a patient is actually teaching and showing the person who's watching, they're going to be in good hands. So in a way, that demonstration is actually one of the fastest ways to build trust, which is what you mentioned. And the second thing you did, which I think is so incredibly powerful, is you empowered the patient to introduce, who did you bring along?
Yeah.
Introduce me to who you brought. How empowering for a patient, whether they're sick or they're healthy, to feel like, oh, I'm the one who gets to introduce. I'm the one who brought them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's special. And again, pre-COVID, you may have brothers and sisters there. You have different parents, different caretakers, grandparents, anybody. And it's a great opportunity to do that. After I engage with the child, I make sure to engage with the parent as well. Now, when I engage with the child, get down on my knees the best I can. These knees are getting older, so it is getting tougher. So if I have to, I'll bend down or I'll get down on my knees to really make sure I'm engaging them. And then I turn towards the parent, good eye contact, shake hands, make sure they know who I am, and present myself. I go by my first name. So I say, instead of Dr. Essel, I say Dr. Kofi. And it's just easier for the families to connect with me in that way. So that was pre-COVID. And then also, I should also mention, I start with, what are your concerns? So I thank them for coming today, tell them it's very nice to meet them, and tell me what brings you in today. And really just giving them an open floor chance to ask whatever concerns and questions they have. And one of the extra tips I put on, actually, I'll save that because I think that's
okay. Okay,
I'll
save
leave
it.
So the other thing I do sort of post-COVID, one of the important things, I think that a lot of the tools I've used before, the smile when I get in the room, because we wear masks now, so it's harder to see me smiling or not, right? The ability to shake hands, like people are scared to do that. In fact, we're encouraged not to shake hands anymore, right? Even if I wash my hands pre and post, they recommend not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Getting down on their level, definitely still can do that. So what I end up doing now, still try to get down on their level. Sometimes you'll find me passing an elbow to the child and still asking, yeah, right? Give me an elbow, right? So they look at me oddly at first, but then they get it. Then I still engage the parent. And sometimes I'll address that, I'm sorry I can't shake your hand like I really want to, but it's very nice to meet you today, and sort of move on from there. But again, we've been avoiding the handshakes and the you can't see our faces as much.
I want to mention something also that's important, I think, post-COVID. So we're struggling with this new protocol, but I actually think that that's an opportunity for vulnerability. So everyone's uncomfortable, right? Everyone's like, how do I do this? Do we shake hands? Do we not shake hands? And so what you said of like, I wish I could shake your hand, but I can't. I will say that one thing that I've been doing virtually is I'll be like, hey, like virtual high five, virtual hug. I wish we could be there together. And I've noticed that wish, that transparency, it sort of allows us to be like, oh yeah, we're trying to be human in this crazy time. And so instead of having to address the whole crisis, it's a small moment.
That's good. That's really good.
So,
And I can see my family's really sort of responding to that well. I think, especially if I have a rapport with them, I think they would be open to the air fives and in the virtual hugs. Like my families would really respond well to that. But I think I would have to have a rapport first with them.
yeah.
That to work in where I am in my setting with the families. Because I think I have to make a good first impression, but I have to connect in a way that they have confidence in me. And so I try to leave some of the light. I don't know. It's a great point you're making, but in my mind, I would think it would work better if I just connected with them first beforehand,
Okay,
and then
so
bring it in, because then they know my personality a little bit better.
So I want to know that. So, okay, you want to build rapport first. How? How do you begin to do this when you have a
Yeah.
short, limited window of time? You're both wearing masks. Give me the magical answer. I'm ready.
Yeah. I don't know if it's magic, but you know, I, I don't know. Like, I think I've learned a lot of skills over the years that I'm not even aware of. So I'm gonna try to, I guess, elucidate some of those the best I can. I'm thinking like I engage with families through phone, I guess virtually now we do, and also in person. So thinking about in person, how do I build rapport? I think the
And
first place is
virtual. And virtual too.
okay. I think about posturing a little bit, so like, how do I come into the encounter? Do I have a genuine interest in the person? Or is it only, just getting this information and moving on to my next patient? I'm in primary care, so I like to establish relationships with my family. So one of the things I try to do is really make sure that my perspective and my posturing is right. So I am on a journey with them. I'm walking alongside of them. I want to get to know who they are in and outside of the clinic. So I'll ask questions about, how's home life been, or what have you all been doing at home recently? Just try to get a good sense of what's going on outside of the clinical space. And you know what? I try to remember those things or write a little note in my chart. So when they come back, I can bring those things up, because the thought is, oh, he doesn't remember me. I mean, he has all these other patients, and sometimes I don't, but I have a little note in the chart that helps me to remember and really spark my memory to say, okay, hey, how did that soccer game go? How did that practice go? And really bring that back up. And I think that families really benefit from that. Another thing I do, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that sounds small, but what I want to really encourage is, in a world right now, we are desperate for acceptance and belonging and care. And so,
Yeah,
no matter your relationship, if you're working with patients or clients or customers, I think that if you can take a little bit of an ounce of extra energy and remember something that they don't expect you to remember. So,
yeah,
name is, of course, great. But if there's something a little extra, they mentioned they had a pet gerbil, they mentioned that they love orange juice. You're not just remembering that they have a pet gerbil. You're actually telling them, you're important enough to me for me to write down this note and then try to share it back with you. And I think that's actually a gift. And we need those little gifts in humanity more than ever. I know it sounds small, but how good does it feel when you walk
it
up to
does.
someone you think doesn't remember you and they're like, hey, how's that pet gerbil? And you're like,
Yeah.
they remember my pet gerbil. Okay, so go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I just had
No,
to hide
I think it's a really great point. The other thing I would say, and I love that concept. So some of the things I say are people are looking for appreciation, acceptance, and acknowledgement. And in that, the acknowledgement piece I think about in particular, because what are the things that my families are saying, and are they discredited, or do they feel like they can share things and they're not going to be accepted? Well, one of the ways that I kind of help them is, I like to reflect and like to affirm what they're saying at times, to let them know that I'm hearing you. I hear what you're
it.
saying, and that must have been hard. I cannot believe that happened. Like, really giving them a chance to acknowledge them empathetically with some sort of reflection. I also check in a lot. So if I'm hearing a story, it's a complicated story, trying to reiterate what I'm hearing. So it sounds like for the last 3 days that this and this has been going on. Is that correct? And it gives them a chance to really confirm. It gives them a chance to know that I'm listening, and they really respond well to that. Another thing that I think is valuable, especially as I've gotten older, I'm married. I have 2 kids. And I like them to recognize that there's a connection there as well, right? So, like, I want you to recognize me as someone who makes mistakes, as someone who has stories. I like to sort of share some of my own personal experiences, and I think that always sort of helps the family recognize that I'm a human too. I'm just like them. I've made a ton of mistakes, but children are quite resilient, right? They're going to be fine. And I think that that's a really important piece for me as well as building rapport. So laughing, joking, connecting, sharing some of these stories, affirming, those are really important principles for me.
So what was the word that you used? You said discrediting. What was like that? Some families have felt discredited. Can we break that down a little bit? Because I think there's something special there.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have a thought that may not be well accepted in sort of the scientific world, in the research world, or even your family members may not agree with what you're saying.
Can you give me an
I
example?
want, yeah. So I am a big fan of holding juice back. for my families for, a longer period of time, recognizing that it can contribute to picky eating. Sugar or sweetness is quite addictive, and it sort of changes their palates very early on. And sometimes there may be other family members in the household who have said, hey, you should start this earlier on. The kid loves it. Go ahead and start the juice earlier on. Or even adding cereal to bottles. Please add the cereal to the bottle. It's going to help the child sleep better. And there may be a little evidence around it, but needless to say, it may not be the best thing to do overall. So in that, coming to me and saying, well, doc, we've been adding cereal to the bottles, and I may have noticed the weight go up significantly in a shortened period of time. And I try to sort of reason with them and say, it does make sense. It seems like, you adding the cereal to the bottle, you're doing it to help the child sleep better. And I can understand how hard it is to not get a lot of sleep during this period of time. So it makes sense that you're doing that. And then try to come in with saying, well, is there a way we can tweak that around? So really make it collaborative. So in a way, I may say one approach is saying, well, take that rice cereal out your bottle. Don't ever add rice cereal to your bottle. That's a way to do it. But again, if I'm working with them, I say, how about we reduce it or only add it once at nighttime before bed if that's what you're really worried about. I'm not worried if you're adding a little rice here. The child's going to be just fine. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things that I'm able to work alongside the family, affirm what they're saying, recognize the heart of what they're saying, even behind, the illusion of, oh, it's just adding rice cereal too early or adding solid foods too early, right? So I don't know if that was confusing, but that's an example.
That's perfect. And the reason I bring this up is because I think that there's two aspects to this. One is that it's a very helpful exercise, no matter what kind of client or patient you're working with, to think, how have they been discredited in the past, right? Like that idea of what pushback are they getting to be healthy in their life, in their past, that they either realize or they don't realize. Knowing, wow, you're fighting against an old school way of doing something, or you're fighting against miseducation, or you're fighting against no education. Knowing what you're fighting against and then coming at in a collaborative way, I think is incredibly helpful, because then you're not saying you're wrong. That's the one thing that all human beings, no matter what, they hate being wrong. And I don't know about you, but I found if I say, oh, no, the science proves that you should not put cereal in bottles, people dig in. Like they're like, well, I don't know, it's worked for me. Have you heard that?
So I see them definitely. So I have seen my families dig in for sure. And in fact, that makes them sort of fight me. Now we're like having a toe-to-toe, and I try to stay away from that experience, that energy in the visit. So one of the things that I've learned over the years is to make sure, well, one of the things I've seen them do instead of that is also sort of shut down, right? And now I've closed communication, I've closed conversation. And that's also the opposite of what I'm trying to do. I want to open up dialogue. I want to open up conversation. I want to continue to build trust and rapport and let them know that I'm here for them, and I want to work alongside of them collaboratively. And I'm here for your family as we watch your child grow. And I think it's so important to work alongside of them. And I say that again, because we can't just come from this perspective of, I know the right answers, you know the wrong answers, and that's the way it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. So I want to bring up kind of this final idea, which is these hidden cues that affect our impression, our rapport, our trust. And I want to share a study. I don't know if I've shared this with you yet, but this is a study that was done with doctors, and they asked doctors to record 10-second voice tone clips. And in these clips, they shared their name, where they worked, and their specialty. So, my name is Dr. Edwards. I specialize in oncology, and I work at Children's Presbyterian Hospital, something like that. Mm-hmm. And they took the clips and they warbled the words. So you could hear the volume, the pace, the cadence, but you couldn't understand what was actually being said. So it sounded like this, like that. And they asked participants, I know, right? That's ridiculous, but that's what it sounded like. So you could hear the tone, but not the actual words. Then they asked participants to rate these clips on warmth and competence, two very important traits for doctors. And they found that the doctors who had the lowest ratings in warmth and competence also had the highest rate of malpractice lawsuits, which it implies that we don't just sue doctors based on their skills. We sue doctors based on our perception of their skills, and that might happen within the first few seconds of hearing them, which is like, so what I wanted to ask this is that have you found in your teaching, as you're working with all these students who are beginning to help others and go through their practice, go through their learning, that there are certain small messages, subtle cues that are detrimental for trust, that are detrimental for building rapport, that you've seen, that's going to hold them up, or that's a gem, that's going to really help them?
Yeah. I think when students start, it's sometimes very awkward, right? Like they're literally trying to learn a whole new bag of tricks. How do I engage with this patient? How do they have trust? Like it's just so much to learn, and you're thinking about what words I'm supposed to say. It's tough. One of the things that a mentor of mine said years ago, and I always remembered it. She reminded me. She said, "Never confuse the title in your name, MD, with medical deity, right? Never confuse that. Never consider yourself to be up here." And again, we've kind of brought this up, and speaking down to your patient. So recognize that posturing. So for me, one of the things that I try to really reemphasize to the students is recognizing that, and recognizing who is in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
The positioning in how you engage your families. For me, and working with children, getting down on your knees is really important at times.
Mm-hmm.
Getting at their level, not standing above them and looking down upon them. Those are, and those are things that you kind of learn over time. That's not helpful, and it pushes people away. It's really sort of matching behaviors that families are making, right?
That's a good one. That's a really
right.
good one. So matching and mirroring like the energy in the room, or if someone's super animated, you can dial it up. Do you do that?
Yeah, I definitely do. And if the mood in the room is very solemn and sad, I'm careful in coming in, being all, spunky and everything. I try to calm it down and acknowledge everyone and make sure I'm addressing the concerns, because I have to make sure to do that. In fact, sometimes I may actually be late into a patient's room. Can you imagine that at a doctor's office? A doctor's
weird,
late, right? So sometimes I'm late, and I have to acknowledge that, right? The families are looking, they're mad at times, and I have to acknowledge, like, I'm sorry that I was late, and I'm here to bring you the anything. I'm here to serve. Like, at the end of the day, I'm here to be of assistance. What can I do to help you? I'm sorry that I was late. Really acknowledging that. So other things that I've learned to do. For example, we use the laptop, like I've shared earlier. So I think one of the powerful traits or things you can do is, if you're typing, so you could wait to the end of the visit and type your note and do those kind of things, which is hard because the notes sort of stack up, and you're just like, I need to get home to my family, or you have other things you have to do.
also,
so I try to type my note.
I like to see you typing notes. It's like when a waiter doesn't write down my order, I'm like, are you going to remember this?
Remember what I said? Are you going to mess up something?
Yeah.
Right. So I have my computer, so I turn my body and engaging the family while I'm also on my computer. So I'm making sure that I still have sort of a direct line of sight with the family, versus putting the computer in front of me and them, where there's a divide. I don't like to have that divide there.
Yes.
So sometimes what I'll do to emphasize that I'm listening, that I hear you, is I'll stop typing and I'll turn my body all the way to them, to let them know that I am here. Like, if you're sharing something with me that you need me to be completely and fully present for, I will do that and let them know that I'm here with you. I'm here to acknowledge you. I'll nod to make sure that they're accepting, and they know that I'm accepting and hearing what they're saying. And those are some of the things that I think that I try to emphasize to the students. Those little things that you do, the nodding, the shaking the hands, those things are really important.
Yes. Okay. So I just want to highlight, I don't know if you realize, like, that's the powerful stack of nonverbal, right? So angling your body towards the patient, showing that you're taking notes, right? That's important, but you're first and foremost for them. Earlier, I forgot to mention that you had said that you even use their words back to them, which, when we were prepping for this interview, you did that with me, which felt so good. You're like, okay, what I'm hearing you say is you're going to start with an introduction, and then we're going to talk about our questions, right? That is so powerful, because you're actually saying, not only do I hear you, I'm actually going to speak like you, which is one, I think, the best ways to show respect that you possibly can. Okay. Last question. What message, if any, during this crazy time, both before and after, would you want to share with fellow healthcare workers, people who are have dedicated their lives and their profession to helping others feel healthier? Do you have any final words or message for them?
I think it's sort of been tied into what we've been sharing today, but I think it's so important as a healthcare professional. You're able to get an insight from your patients and families that nobody else is privy to. And you have this opportunity and this connection there that's special and unique. And we want to cherish that in the best way that we can. One of the ways in doing that is to recognize our role in healthcare, our role in connecting with families, working alongside them on a journey versus forcing something on them. I think it's so important to recognize that. Recognizing our posturing as we connect with our families and recognizing what role we play, right? Because even if a family connects with you, shakes their head, acknowledges they're going to do everything, doesn't mean that's going to translate into the action behind the scenes, right? Even if they come back to you and tell you that they haven't met any of these goals or anything like that, you still want to affirm them. You still want to acknowledge them because they're human beings. They deserve it. And we know that this is a journey. This is not sort of a one-stop shop. And that's the important thing that I think it's important that everyone hears.
And by the way, I wanted to emphasize that for everyone watching. I feel like I'm in a journey with all of you. You know, I've made it my life's work to make sure that I'm trying to help in some small way by featuring Kofi's voices and other helpful tips. So if there's things that you want to hear more from me, if there are people that you want me to talk to that I can share or help you on your journey to helping people, I am so happy to be of service in that way. And now I also have to say thank you, Kofi, for you just jumped when I asked you to be on the channel, you're like, yes, I'll do it, no problem. I want to thank you for not only sharing all this wisdom with us, but also all the work that you do with families and students and an advocacy, which we didn't even get to talk about, maybe another video. So I want to thank you so much for coming on.
It's my pleasure. I cannot wait to introduce my students to some of the great work you're doing. It's going to be an honor.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. Let me know in the comments what your favorite part was, and I'll see you in our next video.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, I want to tell you one more thing. You are amazing. The question is, do you know how to share it? I'd love to help. I save my very best tips for my insider subscribers. Subscribe for free at scienceofpeople.com. I know your inbox is sacred, so I promise to send you only emails you will love. Hey there, don't miss any of my next videos. Tap the bell next to the subscribe button and get alerted when my next amazing video can come your way.